I definitely, I think anything else you'd have felt kind of shortchanged. Be like, wait, come on, because we get so much grit, right? So much reality, and then like a cookie cutter, and you'd be like, ah,
Yeah.
fuck.
Yeah.
So it was, but how, like, crafting that ending, right? Well, firstly, how many differences were there in the way it was going to end? And then when you decided, okay, this is the thing, what was the fault of that scene creation? Because the way we get it, and then the rotation, it was just, oh man, it was great. But how did you go, right? This is what it looks like, and this is what I want it to be.
Yeah. I mean, there were some comps like, my shot list binder was really fun. It's fun to go back and look at now, but it's like, it's like 3 times as thick as like the script is, because I wanted, because we're moving fast. So like if I knew as a first time filmmaker, I was going to feel lost at some point, like you just get overwhelmed with decisions and you're like, okay, I need something to return to sort of know what I need clear-eyed Josh from 3 months ago before the shoot who knew what he was doing with this story to have written a note to my future self saying, just make it this way. Don't ask any questions, just make it this way. And so, there were scenes in movies where I was like, okay, the effect of this moment is sort of executed well in this way, and I think it would fold into what we're doing well here. So I would have these frames. I would just sort of say, I'm not going to board this. I'm just going to screenshot this frame. And so we did that. And then that helps me sort of have that like snap back to having the idea, And
Mm,
so that was important to me. But then like, in terms of the ending, there were times where it was somebody else, and something like that happened to somebody else in the story, and
right.
it felt like we were sort of like making the point, but by half. We were sort of too cute by half. And then there were other times where, I mean, frankly, the movie was just a different movie. Like, and Jake can talk about this, and I actually want to hear what he. I guarantee, he reacted well ultimately, but like I know that he must have just been like, man, this fucking guy, I can't believe he's gonna do this to me. But like we shot a full budget proof of concept in LA in 2011. I think we shot in 2011 and then finished in 2012 or something like that. And at that time, it was the first 10 pages of the script, which is essentially like the house and the house shootout. That was kind of like what we shot.
Mm,
And that was supposed to be like like the opening scene of the movie, and it's what sort of kicks off the story, but it was almost more of like a standalone sequence.
right.
And then the rest of the movie was going to be another case that would then be sort of influenced by that event, but not like directly involved. And after we shot it and I cut it together, I was like, wait a second, this should be how the movie turns. And so we had spent a good amount of money in LA to shoot that. And it was a way to be like, hey, we're ready to go. This is how we would make it. Let's go do it. And here's the script. And I made the decision to do a page one rewrite on the movie and change the entire story based on how that went. And it completely changed the shape from page like 20 to 120. And I remember telling that to Jake and him just having like a pause and then basically being like, okay, like, it's been years. What's more years, like, yeah, yeah. But so part of the process was me just finding the voice of the movie and just being dumb enough to listen to it.
Okay. Okay. So yeah, Jake, you really did trust Josh. You know what I mean? You were you really drunk that Kool-Aid, man. Like
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Can we just say right now or something like, hey, spoiler alert, stop listening if you haven't seen the movie or something like that? Because I would talk about it. What do we think? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
Yeah, I mean, I'm down to go into spoilers, but it's up to you, Kevin.
Oh no, like this is your time, right? This
Okay.
is essentially you can talk about whatever
Okay,
you want
guys,
to talk about.
whoever's listening,
Yeah.
stop listening if you haven't seen the movie, because I'm about to
Yeah.
give you a spoiler alert.
Go rent it on Apple TV Plus, iTunes, Prime Video, Vudu, Google Play, Cable on Demand, starting January 27th.
That's
Okay,
right. Baby.
now
that's
spoilers.
the
commence.
pitch. Now, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
I think we're talking about the same spoiler where Chris gets killed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting, man. Like one of the scenes that I was really interested in, and I think this kind of sparked some of our LA shooting, was like the guy coming out from undercover and sort of going to a triage. Like initially, this was more of a deep cover operation when in one of the first iterations of the movie, and that was a scene that was of interest to me. Coming out of a deep cover situation, going back to an apartment where all your plants are dead, and you've got a pile of mail and a note from your ex-girlfriend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so. Clearly that ending is decompressing from something like that is out of the question with this ending or whatever, and it was a little bit of a shift. I think for me to process it, I had to process it for a minute, because there was because I'm close to the character and I love the character and I want the character to keep going. I'd love a sequel,
Yeah.
But I think it serves the story well, and in watching it and how it was done, I'm just like, that's amazing. And what's funny is around like in the year or two before we shot the movie, I was in a couple of other projects, one play and then another short film, both of which I was killed off. So it just kind of fit the theme. It was like it happened in threes, right? And this was like the pièce resistance of Jake dies on screen.
You're essentially the new Sean Bean.
Yeah, that's that. Yeah, right.
Yeah. And there was all that, originally it was like the Jim character wasn't corrupt. He was based on a real guy who had passed away in the line of duty, and like the undercover, it was about him wrestling with that. And then also like there was an element of, and this is kind of semi based on the real case as well, where there was a woman that he had become very close to in the town, and then when he had to reveal who he was, it was sort of devastating to her, and it was very hard for him to sort of remove himself from the situation. So there was those kind of emotional stakes going on, and so that was kind of present. And then also, and those iterations were part of, like, at one time we were like, what if we really strip this down and it's like, what if Terrence Malick made an undercover cop movie and we made it very free form and it's very meditative, and we're like, well, what would that look like? And it felt like something worth exploring for a little while, and then we were just like, this is fucking pretentious bullshit. Like, let's just make a hard charger. And then once we got on the idea of Chris dying, it was like, I think Chris has to go, because we really had to show what the stakes were for making that decision. And then what I liked about the structure after that is you then see Anthony basically, like, sort of, it's like a cycle. You see him almost live this mini arc to make the same decision Chris makes. He's like, okay, now I have all the information about the unit that I need. What am I going to do with it? And that's the audience. That's the invitation for the audience to be like, I would do this or I would do that. But it's like, but I needed to show the audience that if you decide to move on that information, your life will hang on the balance once you make that decision,
Yeah, I think the other thing is, like you mentioned earlier, about on the ride-alongs, you see people you can get in the bubble, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we see Chris in, because throughout the film, like, there's a point where Jolene's just like, I don't need you to save me. I can save myself, right?
Yeah.
And there are all these things going, watch out, watch out, watch out. But as you say, he then becomes like a bit of the hero cop, So it's just like I can save the day. I can do this thing. So for it to then go like that, because you're buying into it a little
Yeah.
as the viewer, you're being like, oh yeah, this is happening. This is happening. Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. And so then when it happens, you're like, wait, what the fuck? Wait, what is this broken? What happened? Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was a perfect way for that to all kind of come together, I felt.
Yeah. It's sort of a way to poke a hole in that kind of narrative. It's also, I'm glad you picked up on what Jolene says. It's like she kind of knows, it's like this is not going to go how you think it's going to go, and the audience doesn't know it's foreshadowing, but I liked just having that in the film. And then Chris, I can't say Chris is making the wrong decision. I mean, he's making the best decision he knows how. He's making his decisions in good faith.
Yeah.
And I've gotten some interesting feedback from people at some of the screenings saying that, like, Chris wasn't entirely likable the whole time, or whatever that might mean. And I find that to be an interesting, I obviously, like so many people, want to root for a character, but I found Chris to be way more interesting than needing to put him into the hero box. Like, I found, him slashing Jolene's tire, and all these kinds of things, and how he treats Junkie J, like, that's just who he is. And I think he's definitely a worthy character to follow, in my opinion. And whether he was going to be likable wasn't really my concern,
Well, I kind of felt he had to be the way we saw him, right?
Yeah.
Because for someone to be undercover for all that amount of time, you're not coming out clean.
Yeah.
Right. And you kind of build up. I say you have it, like I've done it. I've been undercover, right? But I mean, I figured that you have to kind of create these mechanisms for you to be able to cope, for you to be able to, because if you're too one way, people are gonna see through you. So you have to kind of be defensive. You have to be, you know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
think that comes through. And I think if he was any other way, it just wouldn't ring true. So I think,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? The way you played it, Jake, it works so well. And this is the thing, it's just like everyone seems so seasoned, right? It felt like, from a guy that's made loads of films, from people that have starred in like major like Hollywood films, because these performances, right? It's the performances, it's the camera angles, the cinematography, all of this breathes so much life into the story that you don't feel this is an indie flick, right? This is a low budget indie flick, that this is anything but a crazy good story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That feels really good. I gotta be honest, because it's like, that's obviously the goal, like, and you make, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're like, okay, we're gonna be able to make the movie, but only for this amount of money and this amount of time. And so you have to make those trade-offs and those decisions. And then you just hope that none of those trade-offs will weaken the movie, and I'm glad you keep talking about the cast. Like, everyone feels so seasoned, because, that was, it's a product of, so our casting director, Joni Tackett, really held my hand through the process, because she knew so many local actors here in St. Louis who had TV experience in Chicago or Atlanta, or and were working all the time. And so she knew kind of who on a local level could round out the cast and be that just really strong presence. And then when we found people, Crystal Torres, Law X as Goldie, Tony Todd, like those people that were outside of St. Louis, they were the person right away. And so I knew, like, in watching their tape, I'm like, okay, this person has the take on the character that is right down the money. And so I was like, okay, once I just need to have, some basic conversations, but like we're there, you know, like we have the people to tell this story. And then it was just, you know, kind of hurrying things along without making them feel like we didn't have a lot of time. You know, you
Yeah.
want to, and that's the cool thing about having a lean production is that you can get set up pretty quick. And so then you can give the actors this illusion of having a little bit more time with them than in reality it's not a lot of time. You know, you can't work the material over and over and over again. And we didn't have time to rehearse, but everybody was able to come really prepared. And yeah, that was the fun part was like take one, I would watch the monitor and it was like watching the movie. And you know, I would just be like, I'm supposed to say something. I gotta give some notes here, you know, like and that was, you know, that was fun for me.
Man, I've got so many questions. I got so many questions here. Like, all right, firstly, with the casting, you know what I mean? What kind of guidance did you give? Were you like, well, this character is this, like, I want them to be this tall and this ethnicity and this and this, and like, what did you give? Or was it just, these are the roles, the minutiae doesn't really matter. I just need someone that can give me a powerful performance.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it was, you know, so Joni was really helpful in that way because like on the page, you know, I didn't really call out ethnicity with anybody, but she was able to really sort of suss out like, okay, you're like she's like, you know, especially with like Anthony, because like I had undersold to myself how important that role was for the end of the film. Like he's basically like he becomes the lead of the movie.
Mm,
And so she was like, you need to give a really hard look at Antonio St. James because he's a local actor. And like, she's like, I know you think it's not like one of these like lead roles, but you have to cast it like it's a lead role because it is. And so then, you know, she showed me his tape and I was like, you know, I literally felt like she had found like a continuity error and saved me before we shot. It was like it was almost that to that degree. It was like she recognized that like you've got to cast this very carefully. And and she was basically like she's like you can do whatever you want, but like it was like her like if you want this to go how you want it to go, you need to cast this guy. And you know, at that point you're like this is a person who helped cast Up in the Air when it was in Missouri, and you know, you're
okay.
talking to an industry, you know, a very seasoned person who's seen everybody in town multiple times, and she's
Mm,
like, "This guy can be Anthony," and you're just like, "Yeah, let's go." And then like you know, when I'm on set, it was like that adage of like, you know, the majority of directing is casting, and you start to feel it because you don't have to like direct take after take after take to get to this place that you're trying to get to. This person that you've cast for good reasons, they're right there, like if not there, right off the bat. And so if anything and you're like okay now we got time because we're there, so
mm.
now let's try a couple of colors that might help us in the edit, but not because we're trying to find it. It's working. It's there. But now let's see if we can make it better. Let's see, you know, what do you want to try, you know, and that sort of thing. And that was fun, you know.
Okay. So two things about Joni then, right? Firstly, how do you get someone that seasoned to be involved in the project? And then the other thing is for her to have that insight with Anthony,
Yeah.
what kind of discussions do you have with her about this is the story I want to make? Here's the script. Like, what do you give her for her to be able to go, okay, this is what you need?
Yeah. So I knew I knew because of the number of roles in the movie, we're gonna need a casting director. We wouldn't be able to really bootstrap it that much and like have me reach out to all the talent on my own because I just didn't know enough to really probably do that well. And I had worked with her a couple of times on other projects. Like I was casting some things, like some commercial things, and so I knew about her and we knew each other, but not very well. And so this is another one of those times that I spoke about before about needing to pitch the movie to everybody because she's
Mhm.
busy. She's probably going to make more money working on a commercial job, but I emailed her. I said, "Hey, can I take you out to coffee? I'm working on this film. Um, production is this date. We have these roles, and here's the script." And then, she read the movie and we talked, and she knew, like, so, the log line is it's a crime thriller. And so I don't know if she really enjoys that genre per se, but then after reading the script, she was like, "Okay, I see what you're doing here. It's not just gunplay. You're not trying to do like a Tarantino gunplay thing on a low budget." And so and I love Tarantino. I'm not disparaging him in any way, but I wasn't trying to just like,
Mm.
"Hey, look how witty this is," and then look at the cool action. And so then, she saw that I was taking the characters seriously on an emotional level. And so I think that's what she signed up for, was she was like, "Okay, I'm going to help you create as much depth within each character as possible." Yeah.
Oh,
And I was like, "Hey, there's this guy, Jake. He thinks he's playing the lead role. You got to show me options. You got to get me out of this." And she never could. And
oh man, that sucks.
no, it was so funny because, like, at the end of the day, like there were a few roles that were just cast. It was like, you don't have to worry about the lead role, which is
Mm.
awesome. And then it was Tony had been signed at that point, and then one of the other roles was Junkie J, played by An Marion. We did some trailer footage stuff when we were in St. Louis. So we had shot this stuff in LA, and then we had that stuff, but then we wanted to shoot a couple more of the other scenes that were now in the movie to create like a concept trailer to close on some of these investors. And so I put out a casting notice to all the talent agencies in St. Louis, and I was like, "Hey, we're just shooting this movie, proof of concept. We don't have any money, but if you have anybody, period, who would be interested in playing this kind of role, um, we're going to be shooting at this time. Let me know if anybody's interested." And there was literally only one person in St. Louis that responded to any of the casting agencies, and it was An Marion, and he was starting out, and he came to set, and like my first time meeting him was on set, and he just lights the screen on fire. Like I mean, he's got these great eyes. And then so then, fast forward a few years when we were shooting the feature, that was one of the roles where I was like, I reached out to him before I reached out to Joni, and I was like, "Are you available? Are you ready to do this movie? Because we're gonna go." And he was like, "Yeah, don't cast the role. I'm doing it." And so then Junkie J had been cast, and yeah, so
Oh
that
man,
was
he killed, like, you believe he's on the junk, man. Like the kitchen and just all of that, like, man, you believe it. It's great.
yeah, yeah. He's a guy who he's so unpredictable, and like he's funny, and like all that. He looks like Tom Hanks from Big, like all that stuff. That's just him. That's just him,
Oh
like
shit.
fucking around, Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So how do you build like the connections between the actors? Because you know what I mean, you really buy all of the, you know what I mean, between like Jake and Anthony and I forget homie that played Mikey, just like all
yeah,
of these little you believe all of these relationships. So
yeah.
like, what do you do to get the actors connected like that? And did you create any like music playlists or movie book playlists to be like, yo, this will get you in the mindset for this role? And oh yeah, check this out for this role. Was there anything like that?
There wasn't anything like that. I think as far as music goes, I did have a composer I was like dead set on, and had never composed a movie before, and so I knew the kind of like ambient kind of score I was looking for. So that was something I could share with the cast if they wanted to. But Jake can probably speak to it too. Like I put a lot of that kind of in Jake's hands just because he's the leader of that unit. So, he was able to, and I think working the way we did with those scenes where like it was very improvisational. They're just kind of hanging out. Like, Jake really took a lot of that on. And I was just there to kind of answer questions. If somebody was like, hey, I'm a little unsure about this or whatever, and like I was definitely there with like intentions, like, especially that early car scene between Jim and Mikey during the hand-to-hand drug deal where they're like kind of feeling each other out, and like Jim is kind of seeing how things are going during training. And like, you know, I talked with Peter Mayer, who plays Jim, a lot about what Jim is. And like Jim, he's kind of like he treats himself as like the mascot of the office to sort of hide some of this some of these other layers within.
Yeah.
And he really enjoyed that kind of like, hey, I'm just kind of I'm somebody you can trust, and like and planting those seeds. And Mikey, he's hearing this coaching from Chris, and now he's hearing this coaching from Jim that's almost like the opposite. And like, I like just kind of putting those things into the actors' hands. And and it goes back to casting, because I saw, like, I mean, watching Pete Winfrey as Mikey on tape, it was like you're just watching the gears turn, because like he's not doing very much. Like he knows the part is an observational role for the most part, and you just have to sort of feel that he's really trying to figure out who he's supposed to trust. And so I just needed to be able to see that he's like, on the outside, he has to sort of like, do that kind of like, oh, I'm laughing because you're laughing and you think you've just told me a joke. So I'm going to show you that I understand, and just sort of like that. But on the inside, through his eyes, he's showing you, man, I don't really know who to trust here. And so, those things were just inherent in all these performers. And so I didn't need to like, have a pizza party or anything like that. I just wanted to make sure as they were coming in that they knew what movie we were making, and what they had to do. And I think Jake can maybe just talk about some of that camaraderie stuff you were talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Josh gave me the sort of training role, and so in a mini way on set, I would, you know, introduce them to people and show them around a little bit and show them what we were doing as much as I could, and then share some of the little bits that I picked up in my police ride-alongs, not drive-bys, and so I just I just stretched a little bit to like take on that role, I guess. And as far as like the sort of connection that we had, I think it speaks to just how talented these guys are. Like, from Antonio to Peter, to we got lucky with that crew for sure, with everybody on the movie. And so I feel like with the good actors that I've worked with over the years, they're able to establish an instant connection with people around them. There's a certain empathy, there's a certain openness, and so I feel like that was there in each of those guys, and so it made it a lot of fun, but it also made those connections feel more real, in the moment, and so we were able to build on a very tight time frame. We were able to build even a little bit of history with each other, and whether synthetic or through doing stuff on set, or taking breaks together or goofing off together, whatever. And it speaks to their talent, I think, and their willingness and just openness to the project. It was a lot of fun. It was really a lot of fun to work with those guys.
Yeah. And like, that neck bones thing, it's like,
Oh yeah, that was something that out of the blue. Like I was like, hey, Anthony, what's a little, he just created that out of thin air. I was like, dude, that's great.
yeah. And like that's the cool thing, is like in a sequence like that, and they know that they're just going to be kind of improvising a little bit, they know enough to like, okay, my character is this. Like they're the writer of their own character at some point, and so, and down to Goldie and everybody, like they're like, okay, I've taken this over, and I just had to make sure they could all fit into the movie, and so it was easy for me at that point because all the actors had taken responsibility at that point.
And one thing to know, like the camaraderie that I felt with all those guys, I mean, it was there with nearly with all of them. But then at one point, Mikey and I, like subtext, have a little falling out, on the job, sort of right before he goes to do his big deal.
Mm.
And Pete was maybe a little method or something, but like I felt it and it irritated the shit out of me. Like he was cold to me like that day on set. And I'm like, what the fuck, man?
I thought we were cool. Yeah. Yeah.
And the exception proves
Yeah.
the rule. It's like when that sort of like connection wasn't there, it was like really noticeable for me,
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, I know what I need to know.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an interesting one because it was a funny scene because it was just like, oh, Mike is gonna do the thing, and you're just like, whoa, shut up, fuckface. But then it finishes, and you're like, hey, yeah, just go and do the thing, So like it was like this interesting kind of dynamic that we were seeing.
The thing I love the most about that scene is just Mikey sitting in the corner doing nothing, and you can like see it's like the whole thing is hinging right on Mikey and his expressions and where you know what I mean? He's so great in that.
Totally.
Yeah, no, that was that was a great bit. That was a great bit. Like, what would you say was the hardest or some of the hardest parts of putting all of this together once you started filming and it's the shots and the time and just all of that kind of stuff?
I think back on like parts of the process where like, there's once you put things in motion, it's like there are things that cannot be stopped, and so that money has to be spent, and so something could go really wrong where you're like, hey, maybe we should shut things down and just like wait till that blows over, but you can't. You have to keep going and kind of make it. So that's the scary part, is like once you start going into production, you're like, this stuff is booked and like the deposit is down, and so you got to go. And so that for me was the good kind of scared. It was like the good kind of fear, where I was able to just kind of know like this is our responsibility, and to know that the crew is looking to me to at least just know what kind of movie I'm making. Like I might not have to have all the answers because they want to bring what they can do as well. And so I just want to make sure I knew the movie I was making. I just didn't want to be lost in that. So like, it's just making sure that I was set on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What
It sounds really easy, but that shit is hard. It's like
no, it's definitely when you're managing teams and you're trying to put together a project or anything like that, it's just like people then look to you to be like, okay, what are we doing? And sometimes it's very much reliant on this other thing happening and this other thing. So you're just like, we're gonna, but it should be happening at this, like one. I had to do this campaign recently, and like the date shifted so many times because we're waiting on this thing and this thing, and then contracts, and the contract negotiation gets held up. So then it's just like, okay, so we can't do it then it's just like, oh, let's do it then, but oh, we can't because all the outside advertising is taken. So it's like, all right, we got to push it back a bit more, and then you push it back a bit more, and you're just like, people are like, oh, so what are we doing? It's like, well, I mean, we're looking at this and we're doing this, but it's cool, man. We're doing it, and you're trying to keep people motivated.
Yeah.
what the fuck is happening?
I really feel that. Yeah, because everyone wants to know why it's not happening, you know,
Mm,
and you just have to show them that like, yeah, it's not happening, but it's always going to happen according to you. You know, it's
yeah.
like, you want to show them that like I'm not going to stop until it's done, you know? And if I can do that, then these delays won't won't be as serious, you know?
Mm. Yeah. No, that's the big thing. Like you must have learned so much from this whole process. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because it look took 15 years. And I
Yeah.
think one of the big crazy things is it's just like so you said that TV show, because I haven't got round to that one yet.
Yeah.
Um
We own this city. You got to
yeah.
check it out. It's incredible.
Because yeah, no, I'm definitely it's on the radar for sure. But it's just like so that touched on some of the things, but it's just like through this process, there must have been that whole thought of what if another film like does this shit? Like,
Yeah.
what if this like that kind of must have been running through, but it didn't. And so you've done it, right? So like what
Yeah.
is yeah, the things that you've learned which are now gonna propel you onto the next thing.
Yeah, I became I think earlier in the process I was a little worried about like, you know, getting beat to the punch, you know? But then after a while you're like I think I can just kind of calm down because there's sort of a lot of stories have been told before. So it was like just making sure because then as you start to bring in like the collaborators and the cast and the locations, you then can really make your movie one of one by leaning into those elements, by making Jake the collaborator. Like Jake can make Chris like no one else can make Chris. And like Tony Todd is gonna know Hughes better than anybody. And like these locations, like, I was worried at one point there were some elements in that James Gray film, We Own the Night with Joaquin Phoenix. Like I was
Mm,
worried about some of that undercover stuff. But then as we go into production, no other movie has a location like that Steelworks in the climax. And I'm like, okay, we can make this thing its own character, then we've got something. And just continually trying to lean into what we have and making the movie's identity mesh with that. Because, there's a really comforting concept. I think Howard Hawks used to say, like, a movie is three great scenes and no bad ones. And so you're just like, just don't make a bad scene, and then work your ass off to make some great ones in there. And so knowing that, I was like, okay, let's go for it.
yeah, I feel it must have given you both so much confidence, moving forward, right? Because
Yeah.
what has it been like now this is done? Like, have you done many screenings and all of that kind of jam?
Yeah, we did a couple cast and crew screenings, which were really great, and then we premiered. We had our sort of our public world premiere at the St. Louis International Film Festival, which is like our hometown film festival here. And Tony came in town for that for the Q&A and everything, and it was his first time seeing the movie. And just fun fact, it was his first time meeting Crystal Torres, even though they have scenes together. We because of the way we shot the movie and the budget, we weren't able to afford to get her out during the same time as Tony's scenes. So we had to shoot the coverage so that they would be separated so we could cut it together later. And so they hadn't met before and they were in two scenes together. And it wasn't until the premiere 2 years after shooting that they met for the first time.
You'd never have known that. Like,
Yeah.
oh man.
Yeah, you get the right PA who has the same arms as your actress, and you can match a lot. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's yeah. But the length of time it took, it helped us even down the road, like when we were talking to potential distributors and stuff, because you could bluff a little bit by saying like, I've waited, 13 years to make this movie. I can wait more until I hear the deal that we're looking for. Like you're not going to get a quick yes from me
Mm.
and or our team, because we were like, all of our investors too had given us kind of the green light. If we didn't see a deal that was going to help the movie, we would try to self-distribute, and having that ace in our back pocket and to say like, we're in a position of strength, that really helped us out and find Buffalo Eight as a good partner, and I think that was very encouraging to me.
Okay. Now, yeah, I was going to ask you about that because I think that is definitely something that a lot of filmmakers then find difficult, right? It's finding that distribution. So, what were those conversations like, and what was the thing about Buffalo that was like, "Yo, this is the one"?
But
Sorry.
yeah, yeah, um, yeah, because it's like, so it used to be DVD was such a big moneymaker for independent film, and now that that's gone, one of the big avenues that it hasn't totally brought that same amount of money in, but the sort of the AVOD, the advertising video on demand component, which is like
Mm,
Tubi, Freevee, here in the US. I'm not sure what all the platforms are that it's probably very similar in the UK, but so basically that's where like the short money is. And so you get a lot of distributors where like, you'd ask what their plans for the movie are, and when they would basically say that that's kind of where they wanted to go with it, you kind of knew that they were just going to go for the short money, get their percentage, and just then keep your movie in limbo for the next
mm,
7 to 10 years, And so it wasn't, and then also like a good tip I got was reach out to some filmmakers who've had movies released by these distributors. And so I went on IMDb Pro, and if a filmmaker who had made a movie with that distributor, within the last 3 years had contact information, I would email them and say who I was, who I was talking to for distribution, and would they care to give me a call and talk about their experience. And we went down the road with a couple of distributors pretty far, and then I got sort of a 25th hour communication from some of these filmmakers, and it was like, run,
right.
and so it really helped us out. And then Buffalo Eight, you know, was the opposite in that way. We heard good things, and they gave us a clear plan on this is how we're going to maximize this movie in the marketplace. And they were smart. They understood the movie. They said all the right things. They named all the references, and it just felt like a good fit. Jake, did you have that kind of feeling when we would talk to them?
Yeah, yeah. A lot of the conversation was way over my head, and at some point, I kind of excused myself from some of those. I don't. It was so far beyond sort of my grasp of business and of under and the you know what I mean. But
Yeah.
riding along on some of those early conversations, it was hard. It was hard for me to tell. Like, and I knew there was some bullshit flying. I knew it, and I was like, this is all bullshit. And then I would hear from somebody like, no, no, that's just how they talk. It's I was like, well, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
some of what was going on was really bumping up against my sort of like small town Indiana like red light warnings or whatever.
Mm,
Um, and so I'm really glad that like Barry and Frank and you Josh, that you guys had the patience and the wherewithal to just sort of weed through that stuff. And I the thing I liked as a witness kind of to the process was that we weren't rushing into anything, that we were taking our time, even though some of the messages we were getting was like, let's go, let's go, let's go.
Yeah. And the way some of these places work, like even places that had a really good looking deal that were like, hey, we want to take this theatrical, we want to put this out on DVD, all this kind of stuff. But then we would look at the numbers and see how much they were, they're basically inflating the numbers that it would take to do that. It wouldn't cost us anything, but then, you know, they would have to recoup it until we saw money. And then, so it's like, okay, they're going to inflate these numbers, probably just do a super slim version of that, just kind of dump it in a couple of screens, and then we would never see any money because they're constantly trying to make that money back. Whereas and applying all those, you know, solid revenues that the movie would bring in, and just writing off, you know, their film market trips to that. And you know, that's kind of the predatory nature of some of these distributors for independent filmmakers. And so kind of knowing that and hearing that from other filmmakers, like, it allowed us to know what terms to put into the conversation, into the deal, into the contracts, and protect ourselves in that way.
Yeah, no, I think, see, I think that's so important, right? There was a UK singer, a couple of years ago, I feel it was, and she'd signed a deal with a major label, but then was just like, oh, but I feel I'm being held hostage. I'm not allowed to sing the music I want to sing, and I can't do this and I can't do that. And you kind of feel bad. But on the flip side, it's just like there have been so many examples of this.
Yeah.
Like, surely you do your homework before you do this kind of thing. Like, Prince was in limbo for years. We've heard about like the Supremes,
Yeah.
Diana Ross, just all of these people that went through hell and didn't have control over their rights and everything.
Yeah.
And I think people do their research, but I think people hear some of these things like, we're going to take it theoretical in cinemas, we're going to do this, we're going to have this run, and be like, oh my God, yeah, it's done, boom, I'll do.
Yeah.
But don't look at it. I remember I was creating an image bank for one organization I was working for, and I needed to find a company to house it and, you know, do all of this kind of thing. And there was companies going, oh yeah, no, so we'll do it for free and we'll do this. But then you look at the contract and be like, yeah, first year's free, next year's 30 grand. You know what I mean? Or they own all the rights to the photos, and it's just like, yo, I ain't signing this. Like, what
Yeah.
the hell? And then you have to look at these things. So I think it's a really interesting thing, and you don't always hear it. Actually, no one's ever said it. The fact that you rang up people and like, what was your experience? How did you go? I think that is such vital information for
Yeah.
filmmakers, and which a lot of people probably do not even think about.
Yeah. And also, like, just being older at this point than I was when I started the process, you know, I had a, you know, I have a day job, I have a family. I'm not in that kind of like early, you know, early mid-20s zone where I'm like, I want to have this like dream director career, and you have these kinds of ambitions. And so like a couple of these distributors might be like, oh, it's his first film, and they kind of came with some of that name dropping glamour thing. And it just wasn't like we were just like, that's all fine. Tell us what the nuts and bolts of the deal are, and like tell us what the deal is. Like, what are you offering and what can you do for the movie? Because I heard some great advice when I was in LA at one time. They basically said like, none of these people have jobs without us making movies.
Yeah.
And so we are in the position of strength. They will make it sound like we need them. But if we are patient and we know how to make a mutually, you know, beneficial agreement, it can work out for everybody. But we just have to sort of always remember that the thing that is actually going to make the money in the arrangement is the movie that we've made. So be confident of that. Don't be arrogant of that, but just be confident that like they need this. And so, you know, that's what I always try to keep in mind, because you know, you start to get that excitement. You're like, oh, they're gonna put it out and it's gonna go into theaters, and you know, and you start to get these like successes, you know, that sort of start to come into your mind, and you're sort of filling in those blanks that they want you to fill in. But then but the fine print is always going to be the fine print. And so
I feel like
That was good.
there was a vibe of just I don't know, maybe predatory is a strong word or whatever, but like, you know, trying to take advantage of like kind of like, you know, a hopeful artist sort of thing. And I feel like this was my impression again, as and I'm more outside the situation, of course, but this was my impression was that it was like there was a way to sort of not really get invested in the picture, but make just enough money that they can pull their expenses off the top, and that's a winning business model for them. You know what I
Mm.
mean? Like that was just kind of like the vibe that I was getting
Yeah.
from some of the emails and conversations and stuff.
Yeah.
Mm. Well,
And
that's the story you hear all the time. You know what I mean? And people get just hypnotized by it, right? Because when someone's like, yo, we're gonna shoot your first music video in the Bahamas, and they're like, oh my God, that's incredible. But it's just like, you're paying for that,
yeah,
right? You're not gonna see any money until that's recouped. But
right.
they don't say it, but
That's
that's
right.
what it is. So it's just like it's impressive that yeah, you navigated all of that kind of stuff, you know?
Yeah. And, not to say it was all smooth sailing, we had a sales agreement with somebody that promised big things with a distributor that was probably our dream distributor. And they had a first look deal. And we lost about a year, just kind of waiting for this person to eventually, show us their true colors. And, so we had COVID slow us down. We had this sales agreement slow us down, but luckily we never made any risky financial decisions. We just sort of lost time. And then when we were finally free of that and we were able to sort of enter agreements, it became very clear what we were looking for and what we needed. And so, yeah, I mean, now here we are within, the release, and I'm just, it happened exactly how it should have happened. So, yeah.
Mm, yeah, but to be honest, right, maybe you lost a year, but it's kind of probably better that you did. Right, because even last year, cinemas, are they open? Are they shut? Do people want to go back to the cinemas? You know,
Yeah.
there's all that trepidation. So it kind of feels like this seems to be like the time for this kind of stuff to fully be able to blossom and really, shine the way it should be.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, no worries, man. So, like, I realized I've kept you guys for a long ass time, so I really appreciate that. I really do. But, oh, Jake.
Oh no, I was saying thumbs up. Hey, I had a note. If you break this thing into two parts, you can put the spoiler alert in part two. I'm
Yeah.
not going to tell you how to do.
No,
How,
no, I
I'm
I
sorry.
might need to break it into 2 parts
Yeah.
because I don't know if I'm just doing it wrong, but I found that I can't upload onto Squarespace something like over 2.5 hours. So yeah, I'm probably gonna have to break it into 2 parts. So that's a really good idea. I think I'll do that. But
Nice.
yeah, like what's next? Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is to continue to try to work. So I live and work in St. Louis, Missouri, and since I've lived here, I'm coming up on almost 8 years here, which is crazy to say. This place is just an intensely fascinating place to me, and there's so many stories to tell, and just sort of things, similar to how All Gone Wrong was like a way for me to tell a certain type of story and then infuse it with things that I learned through research. I'm doing that along the same lines. And, there's a particular true story or series of true stories that are connected in St. Louis from the 1970s dealing with airline hijackings and a helicopter hijacking attempted prison escape that are just stranger than fiction. So I'm kind of wrestling that research and putting it into a shape and writing that script now, and sharing little things with Jake as I go. And so
Wild story, Kevin. It's insane.
yeah, but
You
yeah,
could
so
spend
just
2 hours talking about that.
yeah, just trying to have fun with it and focus on it, because so many times, like, there's going to be people be like, oh, you shouldn't make it that way. You should make it like this. And, oh, well, what about this? And, there's only one part of the process where like nobody gets to tell you how it should be. And that's in the writing. So like, I'm trying to use that freedom wisely.
Well, I think this is a great proof of concept, right? It's just like no one can be like, oh, well, I feel you should, because you've done this, right? You did this the way you wanted to do it, and it's worked so well. So it's like, you know what I mean? There's always that I don't know everything, right? So you can take advice, but if someone's just like, you are so wrong, you can be confident that no, I feel I've got the skills to be able to do it, right?
Yeah.
And I think you've shown that with this.
Yeah. And, a thing I'm reminding myself too is, it's okay to be pigeonholed for a little while. Like, just keep making movies, keep going. And, if I got to make another crime movie, I could think of worse things. So, yeah.
Oh, one thing I wanted to ask and I forgot. What's your sister think, right? Because you basically, barged into her life. Yeah, got in, you stole stories, and you profited. So how much cut are you giving your sis, right? And what she think of the finished product?
She was definitely the doorway, and I think she's sort of as sort of like kind of she's having this pinch me moment just like I am. Like, this movie's coming out, and she remembers like when I was just in college and I was asking her to like introduce me to people and stuff like that. And so she's having fun kind of going on the ride, like seeing all the lead up to the release. And she's a pretty private person, and as a police officer, she doesn't want to go kind of taking credit for a bunch of stuff. So she's like, stop mentioning me in interviews, and but it's just kind of the origin story. So but no, she's super happy with it. And she was in some of the cop short films I did in college, and so at least she doesn't have to be like in the trailer for this one. So yeah.
Oh man. No, this definitely must be something. Now, you also, the other thing you mentioned that you were writing that, like, all the notes in the script and the changes and the ideas for the shots and all of that. Have you ever thought about putting that out there?
So I did. So as part of the Kickstarter, like one of the rewards was like an annotated script. It was going to be like my script with all my notes, and then like, so I did create a big sort of PDF version of it. And then I included the big shot list as sort of like an addendum. So I have that, and I probably will put it out. Like in the weeks coming up, there's cool stuff coming out. Like we will have a DVD release that I'm excited for. We recorded a commentary track that we're going to put on our YouTube channel.
Nice.
There's extended interviews that I've done with Tony and with Jake that I'm going to put out as sort of behind the scenes things. And maybe I will host like a PDF download of my script and all my notes and things like that, and people get to see just how easy it is to make a movie. You don't have to be very smart. I'm proof. So yeah, it'll just take you 15 years if you're as dumb as I am.
Yeah, you are either a great visionary or a real procrastinator. You know what I mean?
Hey, hey, not gonna lie, I did watch all the seasons of Breaking Bad and Mad Men during that time. So like, yeah, I wasn't just like locked in a room working only on this movie, but yeah.
Oh man, no, yeah, this is definitely, you know what I mean? I think it's just a really great testament to all the effort that went into creating it, all that hard work that you had this, you know what I mean? Because look, there's work that has taken a long time, and you could look at it and you'd be like, you know what, that was a real good effort. like that, it was decent. There was some really promising moments, and you can see the potential for you to grow and become something. But it's not every day that you get to see something that just feels so polished, right? Just so like it can stand up there with like The Wire, with Serico, with
Oh
Donnie
shit.
Brasco, you know what I mean? Like with some of these films that you can be like, yo, this is this complete story that really just grips you. And that's what this is. So I've just
I
been
don't think I'm built to handle this praise well. I was not expecting this. I'm gonna
no,
be an insufferable prick
I'm,
today.
I'm only
Yeah.
saying it because like I honestly really enjoyed it. And it's just like when
Thank you.
AJ hits me up, I know she's gonna send me something good, right? And you're just kind of okay, so how's this gonna be, right? But you know it's gonna be good, you know you're gonna like it. And yeah, it was so much more than I even anticipated it to be, right? I'm not one for just blowing smoke up people's asses. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna say this to you and then be like, what a pile of shit. Like, woo. No, there's, you know what I mean? There's no point. And I think one of the big things about this podcast is it's like I want to give people honest opinions to things and have honest conversations. And there's been times and I've spoken to people and I'd be like, I wasn't really feeling that bit or this in the film. And I remember talking to someone at I think it was a 2018 London Film Festival, and we're talking about the film. I was just like, yo, this part of it I didn't really get, but because I've got bad eyesight, so I cannot see subtitles. And when you put like a visual cue, right? And oh, like the door's slightly open, I'm not gonna see that. So I was speaking to the director about the film, and I was like, yo, this one bit I wasn't quite sure. And then he was just like, oh no, so this happened and this on the screen, and be like, oh shit. That makes complete sense. Okay. And you know, but it was just like I was happy to have that conversation because I didn't want to be like, I loved it, and then be like, yeah, there was this bit that I wasn't. So I think
Yeah.
there's no point saying things that aren't true. So when I say that this film is legit as fuck, the film's legit as fuck, man. Yeah, you know what I mean? I feel
Yeah.
that people are gonna really enjoy it for sure.
Cool. Thank you. That means a lot to me. I mean, yeah, you just want people to respond to it and react and be entertained, you know. And that's what I was doing with a thriller the whole time is you want people gripped, and to hear you say that means a lot to me. I appreciate that.
And no worries, man. Just make sure when you've got this you know, St. Louis trilogy coming, that you come by and we talk about it because
Yeah.
I'm intrigued already. I
Yeah.
want to know what like hijack it,
It's
yo.
bonkers. It's so bonkers. It's so strange. You
Mm.
have to you have to look it up. It's basically a woman hijacked a helicopter in 1978, put a gun to the helicopter pilot's head, wanted to go break out some prisoners from Marion Penitentiary, which was the replacement for Alcatraz. It was the only supermax prison in the United States at the time.
Oh shit.
The pilot steals the gun from her, shoots her in midair, and then what was it? 6 months later, her daughter, her 17-year-old daughter, hijacks a plane to break out the same prisoner while he's on trial for the helicopter hijacking.
Oh man.
It's insane, and that's just like that's not even half of it.
That's the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah,
Whoa. Okay. So yeah, we
Yeah.
definitely need to talk about that one.
yeah, yeah. So I'm trying to wrestle that bear right now and put it on paper, and I'm having a blast. It's gonna be fun. But yeah, St. Louis trilogy. I'll have to think what the third thing is. So yeah.
You're gonna be the St. Louis version of Richard Linklater. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll wear that. I'll wear that. Yeah.
Oh man, Jake, any other juicy roles coming your way?
I've been on a little hiatus lately, so nothing at the moment. But this year I'm looking to sort of branch out a little bit more. And I want to send this movie to a couple of my old casting agent friends and agent friends, and maybe start jumping into some more work this year.
Oh shit! Yeah, you will definitely get work from this, man, for sure. When
Thanks.
people see, your portrayal of Chris, yeah, you know what I mean? I think I'd be watching a Marvel film and see your friggin' name in the credits or something. You know what I mean?
Nice.
Oh man! All right, well, guys, man, this has been such a great conversation. Like, I really appreciate it. Thank you very much, man.
Yeah, this was awesome. Thank you so much. I was glad to come on with Jake, and yeah, I appreciate your analysis of the film and asking about all the backstory and stuff. So I had a blast. Thank you.
Ah,
Right. Same here, Kevin. Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate the conversation.
no worries at all, man. Where can people find you? Let people know your socials and all of that kind of jam.
So my website is joshguffy.com. My Instagram is joshguffy. And yeah, you'll find all my stuff there.
I'm at IMDb, Jake Kaufman 2. Jake Kaufman 1, I guess, is a composer. So that's where you
Damn
can
it.
find all my stuff.
Well,
Somebody's got to go.
yeah,
That's right.
definitely. Take him out.
Yeah.
We'll hijack a plane and do it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Flash his tires.
Well, people, like, all the links are on the website, so make sure you go follow these guys, and you know what I mean, so you can see what happens next. But the big thing, you gotta watch All Gone Wrong, because woo, this film is great. Oh, before you go, a film that I think you will really enjoy, it's called Blonde Purple. It's this heist film, and man, it's so friggin' good. It is so
Blonde
freaking good.
purple.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I
It's
think
on the watch list.
I think you will enjoy that.
Right on.
Nice.
Awesome. Well, all the success, and I know you will get it, because yeah, the film is great. So hey,
Thank you.
congratulations. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing what you do in the future and talking about it on the podcast.
Nice. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.